that you had to pay for this, and if I'm giving it away free, well, I don't think it works that way. The famouser I get, the more you want to take my classes, and the better I get at teaching, and this is a huge part of my marketing. So, but the other thing is, but do any of you know who I am, or I don't? That sounds terrible. Did you look me up before you came? Atticus, did you Google me?
I did Google you.
Good, man. Danielle, you're just trusting your mom, right?
I had heard your name before.
Yeah. Lois and I are good friends. We belong to the same painters group and have for several years now. And if you live in the Triangle, you're welcome to come. It's at the second Tuesday of every month down in Cary. Just drop me a note before you leave. Yeah, good. And normally, well, let's see. Sure, we can do, a 3-hour class goes by so fast. I often don't do anything, but we can at least do where you're from. So, Andy, where are you from?
Boston.
Where?
Boston. We just moved here.
Boston?
Yes.
Massachusetts?
Yes.
Wow, welcome. How long have you been here?
6 months.
Well, welcome to the halfway south. The real stuff starts at the next state line, but I don't know if you know that. And Atticus, where are you from?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yay. What does the NB stand for?
Needham Button High School.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. I'm thinking Broughton, but I forgot the Needham part. Very good. Bob, where are you from?
Originally Charlottesville, Virginia.
Oh yeah, I've been there. Beautiful town. But you live here now?
Yeah, I've been here for over 20 years now.
And Lois, you live here, but
Yep.
where are you from?
Nebraska, South Carolina, Florida, Chicago.
Yeah. Good. Got it. Me too. Michigan, Ohio, and Texas. Where are you from, my dear?
Cary.
Yes. You born here? Was she born here?
I was born in North Rockland.
Yeah. Very good. Christopher?
Born and raised in Pittsburgh, been down in Fuquay for 7 years.
Very good. Well, thank you all for coming. Good to have you here. Drawing class, right? Is that what you're expecting? This is a drawing class. Let me start out by telling you, what's the word? Defusing. Let me tell you what we're not going to do today. We're not going to draw an apple with a light and little arrows or anything like that. And thank you, by the way. Lois did that so the rest of us would remember to turn our phones off. And we won't get upset if we do, especially in class this small. But
Good job, Mom.
I always appreciate the first person who makes a noise. It's like, because I usually go, oh, that's right, I forgot to turn my phone off. But today I actually did, so we're good. We're not going to do, part of what I want to say is we're not going to do a lot of things that a lot of people, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of people would think, oh, in a drawing class, we're going to draw. Well, we are going to draw a little bit, but probably not what you're thinking. So the first half of the class, or third anyway, we're going to talk a lot about how our brain works. If you walked in here tonight, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, if your drawing skill is a 6, at the end of the class, when you walk out, your drawing skill will be a 6. Because I can't turn you into a good drawer in 1 3-hour class. So we could try, but it would be all smoke and mirrors, paste, binder twine, and duct tape. It wouldn't be the real thing. It would just be you imitating. So we're not going to do any imitation. Instead, if you walk out of here same as you came in, there's going to be one, I hope, huge difference. And that is, but now you know which way to go. Okay? I'm going to point you in a direction of how to become a good drawer. And this has been a lifelong study of mine, and as my life gets longer and longer, my study gets longer and hopefully better. I've been a kind of a good drawer sort of my whole life. There was that one kid in every grade in your life growing up. You might have been that kid. Anybody, Atticus, are you the kid? Are you the kid?
I was the kid.
You were excellent. I was that kid that could draw, kind of just one tick better or two than all the other kids. So, I haven't had to learn how do people draw. My journey has been quite the opposite of most people. It's been, I draw pretty well. What is it that I do? There, I hear coffee. What is it that I'm doing that other people don't do? Okay, so that's sort of been my quest. What is my mind, my brain doing? Now, believe me, this is what I wish artists who are so much better than I am, this is what I wish they would do to me. Come on, tell me, what is your brain doing that I just haven't caught on yet? And it's really hard to find people for me to do that. You know, Richard Schmidt, come on, if I could just turn you upside down and shake you, so everything he knows about would fall out. I was like, oh, that would be just fantastic. So that's what I'm going to turn myself upside down and shake me and try to give you what I know about drawing. Okay, a lot of it's going to be talking, because I feel like I have to. I'll try to make it interesting, but it'll be sort of scientific, sort of psychological, a little bit sociological. Why do people do what they do? So let's start at the beginning, when we were babies, when we all came out of our mother's womb. I've heard the numbers. I think it was a TED Talk or something like that, one of those podcasts that I listen to a lot, and I forget the numbers, but it was ridiculous. It was incomprehensible. They said that a baby's brain is developing synapses, and it was like in the trillions per minute or something. I mean, I don't even remember. That sounds absurd to me. All I will tell you is that the number they said sounded just that absurd. Millions, billions, trillions, didn't matter. That a baby's brain is just doing amazing things. And I'm going to try to reach into that foggy mystery of what a baby's brain is doing and talk about how we develop as infants, toddlers, children, and so on. Our brain is very cleverly, and I'm going to use the term either very cleverly designed or evolved. I don't have a dog in that fight, so just let me use whichever term happens to come out. Our brain is ingeniously designed to keep us alive. Our eyes are exquisitely evolved to keep us alive. So congratulations, if you're alive here tonight, it's because your eyeballs have been doing exactly what they were designed to do. Okay? Now, staying alive, or keeping you from getting run over by a mastodon or a Mack truck. That's what your eyes are very, 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 very good at. Your eyes are, if we were still running around in the jungle or whatever, they're also good for finding food and avoiding poisonous things and stuff like that. So, now I'm sounding like, you've heard that story before. All these things on our body were evolved to keep us alive. And indeed, that's what our eyes do. Then when it comes down to not getting run over by a mastodon, compared to doing a portrait of your mother, if you feel like those two things are kind of like opposite, you're exactly right. I mean, they are so opposite. Again, we can hardly even imagine the great gulf fixed between those two things. So people can be absolutely fully functioning, healthy, successful, good-looking, rich, cool, whatever you want to say, adults, and not be able to draw, as we say, themselves out of a paper sack. They can't draw anything more than stick figures. And I don't know if it's Trump or Obama or Bush. I'm just going back and presidents. People are, for better or worse, they've really accomplished something. If you ask them to draw, some of them might be, in fact, Bush, didn't we? The last Bush, after he stopped being president, he took up painting. I don't know if you've seen that or not. And, not bad. Not bad, if you ever see this. Not bad for a beginner. And I salute the endeavor. Indeed, I really do. But a person can be, again, eminently successful without being able to draw anything. So just the fact that you guys want to draw puts you in a kind of a narrow trough of humanity. Most people go traipsing through life and they can't draw and they don't care. So part of what happens when we come into this world, our brain, and I'll stick mostly with the visual part of our brain, is designed to keep us alive, burning as few calories as possible, right? This sounds like you've heard all this kind of stuff, right? You want to stay alive, but you don't want to work really hard at doing it. Because if you have to burn a lot of calories looking at stuff, then that might be calories you can't use running away from the mastodon. Again, okay? So we're just ingeniously designed to stay alive. So listen to this. That means your eyes are in the business of trying not to work very hard. That's what your eyes do in their natural state. Here's what your eyeballs want to do. When I say eyeballs, of course, I mean really the visual part of the brain. By the way, the number of neurons I've heard, nerves that go into the brain is 38% of what goes into our brain is visual. That's huge. The other 62% is divided between all the other stuff that our brain does. 38% is visual. So here's what your eyes want to do. All is well. Yep, all is still well. Got it? That's our eyeballs acting natural. That's why when I say, okay, I'd like everybody right now to draw a portrait of your mother. We're not going to do that. It would be a huge waste. It'd be kind of fun, but in a 3-hour class, we don't have time. But how many of you think you could do a pretty good job? Yeah, you have a great advantage, Danielle, because she's sitting right there. Let's all do a portrait of Danielle's mother, and it would be easy for all of us. Okay, most of us, we would just totally bomb, right? We'd get hair, ears, eyes, nose, mouth, and maybe a few. She has a mole right there or some such thing. We would do a terrible job. And again, if I may, the reason is because our eyes, their number one job is to go. Got it? Is to not work, if you will. Just like everything else in our body is designed to not work, right? We're designed to store fat, all that stuff, in this century as Americans, the stuff we hate, our every muscle in our body is designed to go. That's what it wants to do, okay? And it takes all kinds of motivation and effort and so on and so forth to overcome that. Same thing with our eyes. So what are we going to do? We're going to start working out our eyeballs, and we're going to do some tonight, working out our eyeballs. By the way, the reason we're not going to draw it like an apple with an arrow, and saying, notice, in fact, if you are like this kind of stuff. Have you seen stuff like this? To show you. This kind of stuff can be helpful. This is drawing by rote. I'll show that at the camera real quick. Drawing by rote. It can show you stuff that will speed up your powers of observation. But you don't really need this kind of stuff. All you have to do is put a ball out in front of you on the table and look at it really carefully and go, oh, how about that? And eventually you would see everything that's on here. Does that make sense? This is a speed up process, but it's not necessary, and that is not what we're going to do tonight. Yay! Instead, I'm going to train your brain, retool your brain to figure out how to see. The reason, listen to this, the reason people can't, most people, not you guys, you're all great artists or well on your way. The reason your friends can't draw well is because they can't see what their eyeballs are pointed at. Now that sounds ridiculous, absurd, stupid, just that can't be true, but just from the little I've said, I've never said it in this exact order before. Why? Because your eyeballs, here's what they're designed to do. Okay? And that's why people can't draw, because they're operating with the visual part of their brain in natural mode. So what happens? I have, my wife and I, for the last 6 months, we've had the joy of having 4 of our grandchildren live in our house. Did you know that? Did I tell you that? And their parents. So we have 6 upstairs at our house. And of course, like you, we love our grandchildren absolutely to death. Any of you have grandchildren. And it really is fun. I mean, it's a zoo, of course. And we've had to make adjustments to try. I work at home, so how this can work. Anyway, they are 7, 5, 3, and 1. Yeah, wow. And it really is fascinating to watch when you're a grandparent. You don't have like the pressure you have with, so you have time, you have a little bit of distance, a little bit of objectivity and relax. And I could just watch, childhood development. And yet my grandchildren, of course, they're the best grandchildren in the whole world. But I will tell you, the 7-year-old acts exactly like a 7-year-old. The 5, the 3, the 1, they all act exactly like the way they ought to act for their level of development. And so we love them, but it's a hoot. There's a lot of crying, there's a lot of laughing, there's a lot of screaming, all the stuff. Well, let me zero in on the 1-year-old who has just begun toddling, in the last several months. When he walks into our den, I was going to say living room, but like most toddlers, we spend most of our time in the den. That's where the TV is, and all the musical instruments. So we have a coffee table. Oh, amazing! We have a coffee table, And our coffee table looks something like, it's a square one, and it's made out of pickled pine, which means it's kind of a white colored pine, and it's got these, it's kind of heavy. And it's got these turned legs, kind of like that. Are you getting the picture? Okay, and here's a shadow of the table, and so on. And when our 1-year-old walks into, oh, it's got wood grain on it. I'm doing all this for a reason, right? It's got wood grain, of course, and it's got a remote control, which, which by the way, he figured out that to control the TV, you have to pick this thing up and push buttons. And before he was 1-year-old, he figured out which end you have to point at the TV. It's like, are we messing with these kids' brains or what? I don't know what they're gonna grow up into, but anyway. Okay, so he walks into the room and he sees our coffee table. And I don't know if he's banged his head on it, but you can imagine that's a pretty typical thing for a 1-year-old to do as he's toddling around, is either bang his head, knee, elbow, or something on the coffee table. Bang. And he makes a mental note, oh, don't bang your head against this thing because it hurts, right? So the next time that our little 1-year-old walks into the den, he espies the coffee table, comes into his field of vision, and he looks at it, and I'm going to be facetious here just for a minute to make the point. And he looks at it and he begins analyzing it. And he says, well, it's got a straight line there and a straight line here, and it's got all these little lines here, and it's got a remote control sitting on it, and it's got a leg here that kind of looks like this. First of all, am I telling you the truth? Is that what his brain does? I hope you're saying, no, that's not what his brain does. Why? Because yesterday or 2 days ago or last week, whenever it was that he banged his head on the coffee table, he filed away, again, because the brain's job is to do stuff on as little calories as possible. So what he did not, my point is, this nice, beautiful coffee table that I've just drawn, and some of you go, you're pretty good at drawing coffee tables. This is most certainly not what my 1-year-old filed away in his brain. Are you with me? So what did he file away? We don't know, but it would be something like maybe that. That's a table. That's a pretty darn good table to a 1-year-old. Are you with me? That's what our brain does. So I'm going to, over here, this is my fictitious filing cabinet. We're going to talk a lot today about the filing cabinet. The filing cabinet is your brain. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Bruce Almighty with, what's the funny guy? Who's this?
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey is upstairs with Morgan Freeman, God, in a big white warehouse. And it's a funny scene, or the whole movie is funny, never mind, but you know. And Jim Carrey, does Jim go over and open the filing cabinet? So he opens this filing cabinet and the drawer flies open like about 200 feet. It just, a few seconds. And it's just sitting there in space because it's a supernatural filing cabinet. And that, God says that's what he's got to be keeping track of. Ha ha, funny. But just that picture, that is your brain. Because your brain, at the rate of billions or millions or something of interchanges per second has, well, especially early on, it slowed down, thank God, we'd never function. But your brain spent what was in mega overdrive when you're an infant, filing, boom, 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 thousands, millions of images. And that filing cabinet, that is what your brain stores. And it stores what I call it a number of different things, but SSSOS, super simple symbols of survival, or super simple survival oriented symbols. There we go. Super simple symbols of survival oriented symbols. The point is, your brain starts when you do not memorize this. That's why not you. That's why all your friends are not artists. Because when they were 1 year old and they banged their head into the coffee table, as they should have, if they'd known they were going to want to grow up to want to be artists, they should have filed this away, but they didn't. They filed this away. And that's what your 200-foot long filing cabinet is full of. Okay, so let's take just so you will really understand what I'm saying. Let's take a quick review, because you all know this. First of all, how does a 3-year-old, be careful here, because it's not a 6-year-old. I don't know if you can do this. You can. How does a 3-year-old, who can draw his mother, by the way, unlike you, right? How does a 3-year-old draw his or her mother? Do you remember? Andy, what's it start out? Pardon? Not quite. That's a 6-year-old. Oh, that was mean of me, wasn't it? We'll get to the stick figure. This predates. As soon as I draw it, you'll go, oh, that's right. Do you remember? You're the youngest mom in the room. Do you remember when she was 3? How did she draw you? Okay, I'll get you started, then you tell me. Here it is. There's mom. And where are the feet? Andy? Where are the feet going to go?
On the bottom.
You're right. Sticking out the bottom of the head, right, Atticus? Are you with me?
And
Okay, and where are the arms going to go?
probably on the side of it.
Right, sticking out. So, oh, okay, are you with me now? This is, and what else goes on here? Tell me.
Got a couple eyes in the mouth and probably not a nose.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, the nose is iffy. That's right. And there's the eyes. And what's on top of the head? Because it's the mom.
Hair.
That's right. So there's mom. Does anybody recognize her? We all had the same mom when we were 3.
Look, Mom, it's you.
And, okay, now something very interesting happens between this and age 6. 5, 6. Then somewhere, I mean, this is pretty amazing when you think about it, because again, this is so ubiquitous, so universal. Virtually every 3-year-old draws mama like this. And virtually every 5 or 6-year-old, by the way, and I'm drawing it just exactly the way the 5 or 6-year-old does it. Why does she have 3 legs? Well, because in the course of drawing, we went like this. And then we added the 2 legs, and if we do it down here, well, anyway. Okay, so one of those 2, good. Are you with me? I'm going to leave that. Well, let's do a quick, some of the other, you tell me, mountain. 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old. How's it, mountain? What is it? Yes, triangle. And the advanced version of it is what? It has what on top?
A snow cap.
No.
Which looks like, exactly. Are you with me? Okay. House. How does the little kid draw a house? What is it?
Square with the triangle on top.
Yes, exactly. Square, the triangle on the top, and the advanced version. What else does it have?
Window and a chimney.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, how does the chimney go, Atticus?
Side on the roof.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Are you recognizing this? Are you going If not yourself, at least you remember. You've seen other kids again. And then what's coming out of the chimney?
Smoke.
And what's it look like?
Clouds.
Yeah, that's right. And if I won't draw them all, but yeah, exactly. And if there's a sun, where's the sun?
On the corner of the page. It's just
Yes,
like,
exactly. Up here, what's it look like?
it just looks like a quarter circle.
And what else maybe?
Oh, there's like little squigglies coming out.
That's right, exactly. Are you with me? All of these are SSSOSs, or SOS for short, survival-oriented symbols. We've all got them. Now, you might think that as an adult that you're able to see with your eyes, but I bet you're not. It's just you know that these are all humorously simplistic. But if you and I actually started working, say, on a portrait right now, okay, now you're going to draw a picture of my face, realistically, you'd get stuck pretty quick. Most of you would get stuck. Unless you've already had this class and you're already disciplined, or unless you're Lois, who's already a pretty advanced painter, but we won't snitch on her. As soon as at some point in my face, here's why I know you'd get stuck. It would be the language you would use. We'll talk more about this later. But you'd say, oh, dang, I always have a hard time with blank. And the blank is some anatomical feature. Dang, I always have a hard time with noses. I always have a hard time with ears, neck, cheeks, eye, forehead, lips, mouth. It doesn't matter. The mistake is that you're naming an anatomical part. And a trained, you all tonight, after tonight, you're trained you're officially artists after this class. You will never make that mistake again. You will never look at a thing and say, dang, I always have a hard time with boats. What a non-artist means when they say that, you know what they actually mean? They mean when they go to their filing cabinet, it flies open, and they go to N for noses, and they pull up a couple noses, they know that they're not adequate. You know, like they know that the Dick Tracy nose, you know, is not my nose. But doggone, their filing cabinet, that's kind of all it has in it, is a couple Dick Tracy noses, unless you took a class or, you know, followed some little back of the magazine sketch one time. So, then that's filed away. And then, so as you're trying to draw my nose, you'll go, oh, phooey, what the heck? And you'll do some version of a Dick Tracy nose on my face. Or maybe you won't, but people you know will. Does that make sense? That's what our brain does. Our brain is trying to keep us alive, burning as little calories as possible, so it doesn't want to do the hard work. As you're going to find out later in this class, one of the hardest brain ups you can do, some of the strongest, most rigorous workout your brain can do, is looking at something, anything, and trying to copy it. You're going to feel that. Like by 8 o'clock, you'll all be, I'm glad it was just a 3-hour class. I'm exhausted. Because we're going to do a lot of that as the evening goes on. So what has to happen? We have to retrain our eyeballs. Let me give you a handout. I could have handed this out earlier. It's not like we're at a magic moment. By the way, if you're the kind of person who hates handouts, then you can leave this on the table, or you can take it home to line your birdcage. Thank you, Christopher. Whichever you like. So the point being, if you don't like handouts, you don't have to follow this at all. Part of the reason for this is to keep me on track. Okay? So again, you ignore it. But what we're talking about right now is the left-hand side, is the focus. That's one of the words that I would use. That's the difference between people who can draw and people who can't. People who can't draw, their eyes are behaving perfectly naturally, keeping them alive. Artists are weird. They stare at things. Their eyes stop. Well, let me demonstrate for you. I'll take my glasses off. Let me demonstrate for you how our eyes, I've been doing it all so far throughout this entire class, how our eyes behave most of the time, and I'm still doing it right now. What am I doing? Not holding still, right? Or think of any wild animal that you see in the wood. Think of the deer. You know, their eyes are like this the whole time. It's like, what's going to shoot me now? Right? Or think of at the end of Finding Nemo, that little fish. Then the joke is he eats the big fish. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but that's what our eyeballs do. That is eyeballs, again, in their natural state, keeping us alive. Again, trying to do that with as little energy as possible. Artists are weird. For some reason, they have this propensity, inclination, tendency to not do what most of the population is doing and to stop and to stare at something. And again, you know, like Atticus and Danielle, you guys are you still in school?
Yeah.
For Zoom? Yeah. So I don't know if you have artistic proclivities, tendencies. You could be very contented for several seconds staring at this little clamp on the board in front of you. Trust me, most of your classmates are not doing that. Only the ones that are artists are going to do that. Does that make sense? So one of the difference between non-artists and artists, just for some reason, and I don't know exactly, it's not my job, but for some reason, some of us, myself included, have this tendency to overcome the natural activity of eyeballs and say, wait a minute. And like one of the funny ones for me is I remember so clearly, I was probably 8 years old at a picnic on a farm in Michigan. I remember sitting there for some reason and staring at the bottom of a corn stalk and examining it. I thought that everybody did that because I was only 8 years old, and so when you're 8, you're the only standard you have. It's only as an adult I've come to figure out, I mean, you didn't stare at the bottom of the corn stalk? Really? That's weird. I mean, what were you doing? Right. Just, I'm confessing now. I realize I'm the weird one. Okay. I guess let's fill out some of these blanks here. So again, if you don't like blanks, you don't have to fill them in. But let me tell you what they are. Here's what artists do. Focus, and the blank is the discipline of blocking out the primitive symbols. You ready? Primitive symbols is what I called SSSOS earlier this evening, or SOS, survival-oriented symbols. The discipline of blocking out the primitive symbols invited by our survival-oriented brain and actually seeing what our eyes are pointed at. That is not what most people do. And I give an example here. One person might look at this picture of a face and they would see an eye, but an artist will zoom and see a detail, half an eye, and even less than that, the triangle in the corner of the eye, the shape of the white, that kind of thing. Now that's another function that artists tend to do. Is not only do they stay still, but they tend to zero in. Okay, so they zero in on little things that most people are big picture, visually they're big picture kind of people. They don't care about the details. Now, just real quick, we can still relate to what it feels like to be my 1-year-old grandson, because every time those of us who drive, which I presume Danielle does not drive yet. Atticus, do you drive yet?
I do drive.
Yeah, and you can remember. Do you remember, how old are you, may I?
I'm 17.
Yeah, do you remember what it felt like by any chance the first time you got behind the wheel of a car? Probably. Did your dad take you driving, or mom, before driver's ed? Or
Yeah. So, my grandparents had a farm.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah,
There
when I was like 12, I used to drive.
Yeah. The quintessential exception to the rule is the farm kid who goes out and drives either a tractor or a truck or something over across the field. Okay, so you definitely had a leg up on the rest of us. I can remember how it felt. First time you get behind the wheel, it's like, and there's just like megatons of visual and mostly visual information coming at you, and you hardly know where to look first. And I actually flunked my first driving test because I missed, something that now I look back and say, well, that was stupid. How could you miss a blinking red arrow? But I did. Why? Well, because that wasn't the only thing I was paying attention to. There was just way too much visual stimulus. So can you relate to that feeling? If you can remember that feeling, then you understand why our eyeballs, why our brains have to dial everything down. In fact, we do it so well now that most of you, on the way here, if you got on a freeway, you were hurtling down the freeway at 70 miles an hour with a multi-ton vehicle. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster. You didn't even raise your heart. In fact, you could more danger of falling asleep than you are of being terrified, right? You do it so often. Why? Because, again, that's a great example of how our eyes keep us alive. As mature drivers, we know exactly what to look out for, right? That's the difference between us and maybe people Atticus's age. Not him, but his friends. That they'll do crazy things. We go, what were you thinking? It's one of your friends answering.
Yes.
Whereas a mature driver, again, is playing chess, knows what to look, knows to look ahead, and so on and so on and so forth. Okay, so again, most of us can relate to that. In order to start seeing things, we need to do this: block out the super simple survival-oriented symbol, and see what our eyes are pointed at. And I already said the non-artistic person would use words like eye and eyelid when drawing the subject, but an artistic gifted person will be saying things like triangle and, I say here, doohickey, whatchamacallit, thingamajig. The artist will not say even white of the eye, because if they do that, their filing cabinet will fly open and they'll draw what they think they see, not what they actually see. Does that make sense?